this is one of the biggest things that I'm constantly amazed at people unable to answer this question. I'm not sure I can either. There's no such thing as money. Money, no, listen to me.
Yeah,
No, money is a human. Go out and find me money in nature, growing on a tree or in the ground or whatever. There's no natural thing called money. There is no medium, common exchange, anything at all like that. It's a human invention.
Yeah, of course.
It's a human invention, and it's strictly, we make it what it is, okay? Then when you ask about that, what the significance of it is, it has to do with value, doesn't it? And it has to do with, okay, this is important to me, okay, and so it's worth spending this much money for, or not worth spending this much money for, or this value is equivalent to that value, and so on. So we move it into this realm of kind of neutrality, where we have numbers attached to it and pieces of paper and gold or whatever the heck it is. But in itself, it is nothing. It is a human invention, all right? So the people who are in economics, I'm going to take an issue with them. Economics is actually an aspect of behavioral science. It's just how people behave relative to value. That's all. Okay. So when the economists want to start talking like they're doing some kind of natural entity, like chemistry or physics or whatever, it's bullshit. It's just flat out bullshit. Okay. So that's just speaking.
Is that how you would talk to someone who just was foreclosed on it?
What? That money's bullshit?
No, that they lost their property because they couldn't afford to pay the mortgage.
The property loss, not the money loss. That's what I think you got to deal with. Okay. Anyway, but you're getting me. You're not getting the wise man of the world, speaking to you. This is one of my own little personal digs in the whole business. But it's a counter question. But if you think about it, there is no natural thing called money. Wealth is what humans make of it. I'm sorry.
First off, just throw out that I think money is trust. So whatever trust is, but that money is a form of trust. And
trust is involved in money, but I don't want to say one's equivalent to the other. What does that mean?
Well,
give me 10 trusts, buddy.
No, it's a measure of social convention of trust. It's a measure of trust. So
I don't see that. There's trust that's involved in it. I totally agree that because trust is involved in all human transactions.
Yeah, and so it's a positing of trust. It's a measure of trust.
What?
In the U.S. government,
it's basically trust that someone will acknowledge you, to a certain degree. So it's a very complicated system of trust, but basically it's all trust.
Yeah, no, I agree with the trust is involved. I don't say they're equivalent because this has to do with values, and values may not involve any kind of trust at all.
The question that was in my mind was, you said, well, the simple thing to say about wisdom is good, foolishness is bad, right?
No, I was talking about what's repeated often in like Psalms and so on.
Exactly. And I'm very impressed that you've done an extensive survey and you're able to speak well about it all. So, having made that survey, now pulling it all together, aside from something, let's say that wisdom is good and foolishness is bad, but what would be the content, like what would be the conclusion or the content regarding wisdom that you think is most profound or most insightful? And you actually mentioned quite a few interesting things. I could, based on what you said, I could, but I'm curious, how would you put it?
Well, it's kind of a lot of it's buried in that definition, which runs on for quite a while. But I'm serious about it, and it's in that little. Let's see, I think I might even have one I can hand to you. I think I brought a couple extras. Yeah. Right, didn't I? Nope, I guess I didn't. I thought I brought some extras.
Are you talking about the Ten Commandments?
No, it's on the opposite side of the thing from the Ten Commandments. I mean, off the top of my head.
Oh, I have
Look, it starts out, there's like 10 points to it that you have to kind of spell out. But it's an achievement. First of all, it's not something that just happens, okay? You have to be trying. So it's something that you do,
And it's dynamic.
Yes, okay, so it's an achievement of what? A balanced frame of mind and a durable way of living such that trustworthy decisions can be made concerning the good life of us all as whole human beings, okay, in our sustainable relations with each other and with the natural world that we live in. You got to get that all in there, okay? And it's a mouthful, and you got to spell them out and all that stuff. Probably if you had to nail me down to one of these things, you know, where do I lean this way or that way? Equilibrium is pretty close. Balance, the whole idea of a balance. What you're trying to do, like in those three spheres I was talking about, you know, the body, mind, and soul. And each one of these things is trying to find its way as a point of balance. So that, and getting imbalanced and doing imbalanced things is a kind of foolishness.
I think, so based on what you said...
And that's what Sternberg says as well, by the way.
And I think based on what you said, that struck me is this idea that wisdom is about reflecting on our decisions. So, because what the whole concept of a decision, you know, so a person could live without ever thinking that they're making decisions. But the very idea that someone is actually making decisions, it kind of creates these basic units of wisdom, you know, or basic units that wisdom can refer to. It says, hey, this was an episode, you made a decision. You can reflect on that. And you can reflect on that, as you said, as a balanced person, like a balanced person detached from that who could deal with many, many different decisions or could look at that same decision in different states. But this idea that there's decision and there's cognizance of the decision is reflecting so that you can develop your decision-making ability.
Can you honestly tell me that all your you are aware of all the factors that go into the decision that you just made?
Well, I think that...
Aren't there times when you make a gut feeling type of thing, like, you know, I know all this adds up over here, but no, I'm going over there.
But I think that's the nature of a wise person, and that's what a wise person is tending toward, is a person who every single action is informed by their character that they've invested in through their decision making.
I don't know any such people, to be honest with you. I think all the major ones. I do this in the course of talking about wisdom and say we have to start somewhere. Who do you regard as a wise person? Well, the names that always pop up, you know, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Abraham Lincoln, Solomon. No, that's not.
He didn't know where he was going, though.
But you have to say this guy was a wise man.
He's trying to stand by his principles.
I just returned from a trip to Yellowstone, and we got the book by Doris Kearns Goodwin. It's called The Team of Rivals, and we didn't get past it's like 36 CDs long. I mean, my God, I can't believe people actually read this book. But it talked about Lincoln and the wisdom that he had, the kind of native wisdom that he had, and she compares him to these other guys that were his competitors and then became part of his cabinet, you know, Seward and Chase and those guys. And but you come away with this distinct impression this guy was unique. I mean, he really had himself together. He got depressed at times. Did he make mistakes? Yes. Did Jesus make mistakes? Yes. Okay. People get shocked when I even mention that. But I mean, here's a guy who's a Jew, and he's saying, you know, unless you turn away from your parents and so on, you know, it's like, excuse me, that's one of the 10 Commandments, isn't it? You know, and it's like, whoa.
Well, it was a very dark period of our history. I don't want to go there,
but I'm just simply saying, if you did, no matter who you pick, I can show something about that person that I think we would look at and say that was not wise. Buddha, I mean the great Buddha. What did he do? He left his wife and kid. You know, that's wise. I don't think we can take that as a totally unambiguous sample of wisdom.
And I think given that framework, like you kind of described that framework, tried to say that decision making is important, but I would say a key thing in wisdom is that this idea that somebody may be wiser than me, that there could be a wiser point of view than, you know, that somebody could have a bigger picture than I do, that there could be reasons, you know, that I'm not cognizant of. So to be careful in judging, and I think so that I may be operating within a decision, but then within that decision there may be a wiser one, and then how do I relate in that case with that higher benefit?
Even if that's the case, you are held accountable for the decision that you made. You are held accountable by yourself, and you are held accountable by other people in society. Okay, so it doesn't matter if someone else could have made a wiser decision than you did. You're the one making the decision, and you're held accountable for it.
Right, so
the only real question is how do you improve that activity on your own?
Well, I think what we're kind of saying the same thing in the sense that for me to hold myself accountable to myself is for me to engage this wider, higher point of view of accountability, which I might not really have direct access to, but over time I may, or through other people, or through consequences, or through my imagination. But I can, but in Jason, to be able to probably leverage your imagination to say, okay, this is how I think of this. But this is the Bible. Maybe the Bible is saying something that I wouldn't think of. Or maybe my grandmother is saying something that I wouldn't think of. Or maybe my imagination, my empathy is saying something I wouldn't think of.
But ultimately, you're held accountable. Whether you can quote the Bible or you can quote Abraham Lincoln or Buddha or whatever.
Right.
The devil made me do it is not an excuse in the law court. It just doesn't work.
Right. So, but to find that greatest reference point of accountability, like what's the greatest, highest reference of accountability? Like that's, I think, what wisdom is seeking, is that vantage point. So that
But I would deny that there has to be a greatest. There has to be a greater. You know, what we're always trying to do is that fork in the road, right? And we want to get to a bridge over troubled waters. And the analogy I use a lot, it's in those PowerPoints that I gave you. There's one that shows you this bridge over these raging streams, and when it's a little footbridge going across there. We want to cross over for some reason. We want to get to the other side and safely, right? But then the next picture in the PowerPoint shows a bridge collapsed. You know? So some bridges are not totally reliable. And then there's another one that is from an old movie where you see the bridge going across and there's this big octopus reaching up. You know, so sometimes the water doesn't want to be crossed. So, I mean, you got all these things to consider. But the point is that in each case, there's a split in the road. All you need is what's good enough. And I don't think that a better choice, excuse me, let me finish. A better choice between two alternatives that are facing at the time does not mean that one is the best choice. And I just don't see the need for that. What you need is to know which one's better than the other one at this fork in the road. And you try using the best, whatever you've got to deal with on that. And you also have to say, what kind of a choice is that? Is that a bodily one, a mental one, a spiritual one? What is it?
So from a practical point of view, I acknowledge that practicality. But by the very thing you said that I am completely accountable for myself. That, like, for example, there may be a smarter demon than me, and I may leverage the demon's point of view, but that's not good enough. Like, I have to. So the very completeness of the accountability that you project upon me, I may project upon myself, says that pragmatically that's a partial answer, but it's not the whole story. That I have to project, I have to be true to a reference frame that has that complete accountability. Like, basically it's a conversation with that accountability, that wisdom. It's a dialogue with that accountability.
Sure. And I wouldn't argue with that. It's true. It's just that if you start putting that in kind of substantive terms, then you're taking something that is essentially abstract, and you're over-concretizing it. So you're making what Whitehead called the fallacy of misplaced concreteness. So I think these are things that you're doing. They're activities that you're doing, and you can point to them, and you can point to individual situations and all the rest of this stuff. But they're aspects of you. They're aspects of what you're doing. They're not some thing out there. You know?
Well, in that dialogue between ourselves and that ideal accountability, we can be growing. And I think you gave many ways how we grow. Like
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
No problem with that at all.
Hey, glad Jerry's taking and very quiet. Right. One of the better speeches I've seen.
Oh, thank you.
Anyone want to go to supper anywhere?
I got to get home.
Are you going to White Palace, Bob? Or?
Going where?
You're going
White Palace.
I was going
White
here.
Palace. Yeah, I'm up for Amsterdam.
If you want to see,
Bob, did you
if you want to see one of you, I think this is Professor Sanborn on YouTube. You can just take a look at.
I can correct it.
Because I'd like to, I want to keep up, as best I can, but I don't always know what things are happening. I didn't know when the last adoption meeting was, for example. That escaped me.
Yeah, but I know what's wrong, and I can fix it.
So if Peter Carroll had to send that note out, I wouldn't have known what was going on.
My
So-
computer's funny on here compared to that, but I'll get you on there now, I'm pretty sure.
So as the youngest person here, what'd you think?
Very interesting.
Did you say it wiser now?
Yeah.
Are you,
They're the wisest
are
person.
you interested in philosophy or anything?
Absolutely. I'm in Dr. Bob's class or anything.
Oh,
Intro to
I'm
philosophy.
sorry to hear that. No, but it's okay. You'll survive it. I promise you, you will.
It's
Good.
interesting.
You're in the inner circle.
Yeah.
And the elite. Among the elite.
That's right.